Hi, I'm Adrian Wassel, editor-in-chief of Vault Comics. We're joined today by authors Michael Moreci and Danny Lohr, as well as author, designer extraordinaire Tim Daniel, and our wonderful marketing and sales team, Syndee Barwick and David Dissanayake. Today is our Vault Vital panel, where we'll be talking a little bit about some of our kind of core catalog and sort of most relevant titles. And also handing things off to Mike and Danny to talk a little bit about the work they've done here, as they have both published multiple works here. So before I hand it off to Mike and to Danny, I figured I'd just get started with a quick little introduction for anybody who isn't super familiar with Vault. So Vault started in 2017. That was when our first books went on shelves. It was February of 2017. We were a science fiction and fantasy focused publisher. We have since expanded dramatically. So we now have a horror imprint, Nightfall, as well as an upcoming middle grade imprint, Wonderbound. So our first two titles on shelves, Heathen and Fissure, represented both our science fiction and our fantasy side of the catalog. And we've grown dramatically since then, and now have well over 60 active series. So I think that kind of gives us a little quick catch up of who Vault is, what we do. We're genre focused. Our mission statement from day one has been to make sure we represent historically underrepresented authors and creators, and really stay true to that mission as we launch our various sci-fi, fantasy, and horror titles. So I think I'll pass it off to Mike and Danny to talk a little bit. Quick introductions for both of them. So Michael Moreci has written for just about every major publisher in comics, from Star Wars to creator owned. He's also a novelist and has an upcoming horror movie titled Revealer, which I think is his first foray into film. So Mike, I wanted to hand things off to you to talk a little bit about your experiences at Vault, having done so much here. You've run multiple series. I believe your longest running series ever is a Vault title, with Wasted Space. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about basically why you keep coming back and what makes doing a Vault title perhaps a little different than all of the phenomenal work you've done elsewhere.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, and that's a great question. I think it's a great place to start because I think it ties into the heart of what makes Vault, working at Vault, and also a reflection of reading Vault comics so unique. I started my first book series that I did here was Wasted Space. And I've said this in interviews to friends and to whomever before, but one of the big things that I think about when I reflect on Wasted Space, which is I've been thinking about it a lot because it's nearing its end. As a matter of fact, I just turned in the 25th and final issue to Adrian just recently. But one of the big things I think about is that Wasted Space, and like Adrian said, I've done a lot of comics. I've done a lot before. I've worked prior to Vault. I forget the timeline exactly, but Image, DC, it's the usual suspects. But the thing that I attest to Vault really, and to Adrian especially, is that Vault is really, I feel like, where I found my voice, as a writer. Wasted Space became me in so many ways, not all the ways. If you've read the book, not all, not all the ways, but it's a testament to like Adrian. When we first started working together, Adrian really let me go places that I wasn't sure that I should go or could go in terms of pushing the story and pushing some of the ideas and pushing the characters' emotions in the heart of the book. Like, he really, really got me to go to these far more interesting places, and not only more interesting places, but places that were interesting to me. Like, he really recognized, like, this is what I do. and he helped me come to this place better. And I know he does that with so many other people, and that's what vault books are. You know, like a lot of editors will just kind of have a set static goal in mind, and they're just kind of dragging, you know, writers and artists to that point, you know. And Adrian, it kind of works in reverse. You know, he sees like, okay, this is where the creative team is trying to go. How do I best get them there? And what you get on the other side of that is better books. You know, Wasted Space is one of the best things I've ever done, best things I ever will do. Barbaric is the extension of that. The plot is the extension of that as well. Different kinds of voice, but still the same, digging for something deeper, digging for something better. And I've discovered that in my work, and I've discovered that in the bulk books that I read. From you mentioned, you know, Fissure, Danny's book, Queen of Bad Dreams, we can go on and on with a ton of different books, but like, that's the kind of magic of Vault, is meeting these creators in the best artistic creative spaces and producing the best work. And I think that's so much of a testament to Vault. And, you know, Tim is there dressing them up and making them just look like the best books on the shelves. Visually, they're tremendous. And everything is just that, everybody doing their best because we're encouraged to do our best and feel comfortable doing our best.
Well, thank you. And you know, the feelings are mutual. I think that Wasted Space is truly some of your most incredible work, and it's been really rewarding as an editor to get to run a series that long. That's a rarity in the independent comic space, to get to go for 25 issues. And I definitely cried when you turned in the last script, and definitely cried over the edits. So now I want to introduce Danny Lore, who is the writer of the Vault series Queen of Bad Dreams, as well as a great editor themselves, a successful short story author who's published a number of short stories. Danny, you have an unannounced upcoming secret project for Vault as well that we're all very excited about. And I wanted to, one, give you an opportunity, if you had anything you kind of wanted to tack on to what Mike said, to sort of jump in there, but also to ask you a specific question of what kind of themes and sort of motifs do you find yourself kind of circling and digging into when you're approaching a Vault series? Does that differ from your work elsewhere? Is it sort of is it the same across your body of work? And just give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Queen of Bad Dreams, and then also how some of those themes might find their way into this new project, and maybe they've matured or evolved. So without further ado, Danny Lore.
Hey guys, it's really kind of fun when you specifically talk about like the themes maturing or evolving. Because I think that I was fortunate enough, I think, to have a slightly different origin of editorial relationship, I think, with you, Adrian, than a lot of creators get to have. Not only were you actually my first comic editor, but also we first met contextually discussing being editors ourselves and kind of what we want to bring to the process. And so I feel like there's a lot of conversations that when you are a newer comic creator, about technique, about structure, about craft, about like the process, that is very scary to ask editors. And I was really fortunate to start communicating with you as a fellow editor. And so I think that that has really shaped how we both approach editing my work in a lot of ways. And kind of shaped what I enjoy doing with Vault, which is playing with the craft. You know, part of this comes from my background as like a short story writer in particular. But I think Adrian and I have a very kind of conversation where I'm like, yeah, you know how this is this is normally done in a comic. What if we did it instead like they do in a novel? Or, you know, like that kind of, you know, approach, or, you know, like, let's do something completely different than what is standard. And even if my idea is buck wild and doesn't actually work, Adrian and I sit and figure out how to make something similar work, how to get like that vibe. And that kind of relationship with an editor is hard earned, and you don't get fortunate to have that relationship as early as I think I did in my career. And with Queen of Bad Dreams, you know, which is kind of like a Paprika, Inception, kind of like a pseudo detective-esque story, is when I approached Adrian and I was like, I wanted this to specifically be a story about agency and community and you know, brown women and brown non-binary folk. That was always on the page. A couple of moments I remember just literally getting the note that, like, for you to do this for your audience, you can just go further. And that's kind of always been kind of the editorial kind of baseline, is Adrian being like, I know how far you can go in this story and let's do it. And I think that has encouraged me in all of my work, but especially involved, but even like, you know, my superhero work, to just ask for like the wildest thing first and then pull back if need be. And I've always truly appreciated that. In terms of general themes, I think across all of my work, marginalization and community is a big part of that, like of all of my work. I like to, like, I love the trappings of noir. I love like those kind of old school kind of pulpy classics. And I like bringing a more contemporary concept of what community is to those stories. You know, like, how far can you make a noir story and then make it actually about family as well? And I think especially on, you know, redacted new project, I'm getting a chance to play with that a lot. And then also from the beginning, I was like, I want this to be a little bit more like my prose than my comics so far, in that we're really playing with a bit more gray area of not necessarily good guys and bad guys, but just messy folk. And it's really, really fun for me to do that, because I think I do that in other formats, but not necessarily in comics. So like the new redacted piece kind of comes from that, plus a conversation I had with Tim actually at a convention, where I realized that I had not done something I truly love quite a bit ever in a comic. And we had a long conversation about why I typically don't do it, about how I typically find it better suited for prose. And that really encouraged me to push myself and go, what if I figured out a way to do it in a comic and be happy with what's coming out of it? And that was really a challenge that I don't think that I would have taken with another company besides Vault, because I trust Adrian and Tim and just everyone involved to kind of just not let me know if it doesn't work, but even if it doesn't work, making it work, which I think is kind of, that's the fun of sci-fi fantasy, right? Like, even if it doesn't work, you do it with enough swagger and confidence and you make it work.
Indeed. And I think you, Danny, mentioned sort of two facets of your work that I see very much as kind of connective tissue between you and Mike and your bodies of work, and that's messy characters. You're both the best at writing characters that from page to page, readers and myself, we hate them and then we love them, and then we hate them and then we love them. And that really breaks, I think, a lot of the tropes that are pretty established in comics, which is you go into a Batman comic knowing who Batman is, right? And you go into superhero comics typically knowing pretty clearly who your bad guy is and who your hero is. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about both of your bodies of work is just how messy those characters are, from Daher to Billy. Those are two great examples. And then also the other point of sort of connective tissue there is that you're both successful prose crafters outside of comics, and And I think that has been, it's been an interesting thing for me, exploring the difference between working with comic book creators who've never published in prose and might not even have any interest, to writers like yourselves who've worked in, you know, multiple spaces. So I think I want to queue up a question for Tim. Tim Daniel is EVP of Branding and Design here at Vault. On top of that, he is a successful writer and creator himself. So Tim curates the entire visual presentation of the Vault catalog, as well as our horror imprint, Nightfall, which is where Mike and Tim have collaborated on the plot, that fancy cool shirt that Mike is wearing. And Tim, I wanted to just kind of throw you maybe the messiest, most complicated question of all, which is, how do you navigate those kind of relationships, switching back and forth between the sort of curatorial efforts of design and then the digging in as a you know, a creator and working as a writer with a small team to bring, you know, a series to life? And you know, maybe in there, talk a little bit about what genre means to you and how you approach genre, specifically science fiction, fantasy, horror, when you're writing and when you're doing your design, and how those may differ and how they might be similar.
Sure, thanks. A messy question, so it's like a day at the office. Only we're gonna
exactly
for everyone.
Vault, we do messy.
But you know, I was thinking as you were talking about the question, I was thinking about both Danny and Mike, you know, talking respectively about We to Bad Dreams, Danny's forthcoming project, Mike working Wasted Space, and now Barbaric, which was recently announced, and the plot. And I was thinking about what they were saying, and one of the things that I just want to start with is that, you know, I'm hearing, like, I don't want to say the word permission, but I want to say support. I want to say sort of it's almost as if they're shouting out to the world that this is a place where you come to Vault and you have the opportunity to almost be unbound, in a sense, to find new limits, new parameters, set them for yourselves. They're not necessarily set for you. We're just sort of unlocking the gate. So when I think about your question, I think about, let's start with genre real quickly. I think about how we perceive each of those things, especially our pillars, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And I think about how we all come to those as both creators and readers with a set idea, a set number of expectations. Here at Vault, it's about taking that and then opening the gate and let everyone sort of walk through that. And I think what happens is, in the case of Danny and Mike, they take advantage of that. And what happens is, from my end of business, as a designer, is that I get extraordinarily rich visuals. We work in a visual medium. And what that yields is just a bounty of amazing visuals and unique characters. It's coming through that voice that's been empowered and fostered by editorial, you and Tay, Rebecca Taylor over at Wonderbound. And it's fostered, hopefully, by some of the work that I'm doing with the design to say, let's keep pushing, let's keep going. We don't have the same parameters that other companies might have in place to ensure that they maintain what they've established. We are in the process of establishing. So even though we are almost 5 years old, we have the opportunity here to just keep the gates open and keep sort of ushering people through that. So when I think about my job, my job as a designer becomes very easy because I have all these tremendous visuals that come through the efforts of, say, Danny or Mike or many of our other writers and artists that are, I think, feeling unlimited, unbound in what they do. So when I think of genre and I think about what we're doing here at Vault, I think about there are no limits. But we know what's already been established. Let's go beyond. Let's just go beyond. And so that makes my job wonderful. It's very exciting to see, when I'm seeing, say, Danny's new project and seeing some of the visuals come through from the artist, and Danny offering suggestions and notes and crafting that character, and then the world surrounding that character. It's amazing to watch that happen. So it's inspiring to me, and I can hopefully bring that back to designing the books. So how do I keep a foot in both worlds? Well, it's pretty easy. I get to gain information and knowledge and experience through working with each one of these creative teams. And then hopefully that translates into when I get the opportunity to write.
One thing I did want to say specifically about the words that Tim used that was important was when freedom with support, I think, is really important, because I think that there are other publishers where you get absolute freedom, but at the cost of like editorial support sometimes. Either you have to reach outside of the company, or they're like, you do what you want to do. It's all golden. And I like working on projects, no matter, hopefully this continues, but that I learn something while doing it. I learned something about craft, about myself, about the process, and having support with an editor that goes, I see what you want to do. Let's figure out how to do it. As opposed to just like a you do you, I think is a really important differentiation that made me literally go to Adrian, and I was like, I want to do this project with you specifically. I think I walked up to Adrian and I was like, let's do this, because I wanted freedom, but I wanted someone who was going to help support the freedom and the structure that required.
Sorry, I just had a technical issue with my headphones. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell if it's coming through my headphones or if it's coming through my computer now. Let's see. Okay, well.
You are not echoing.
Nope.
Well, that's good. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but anyway, so that interruption aside, I wanted, I'm bound to happen on any kind of virtual,
Like I said, it's just another day of Vault. We're just broadcasting.
So Danny, thank you for that. Tim, thank you for your wonderful answer as well. Both very illuminating. When I think about our sort of vital titles, right? I think about really a huge range of stories and creative force. We have, titans like Brandon Sanderson on Dark One with Jackson Lansing, Colin Kelly, Nathan Gooden, Kurt Michael Russell, and Darren Bennett filling out that team. And this is a OGN series, by New York Times international best-selling Brandon Sanderson. And then I think about books like These Savage Shores, which is a fantasy series as well, by a then much more emerging creative team, Ram V, Sumit Kumar, Aditya Bidikar, and I see these series reaching the same sort of kind of titanic heights, these immense heights, and reaching really incredible audiences that talk about them for years and engage actively. I think about other series like Wasted Space and Queen of Bad Dreams, which both are now, Queen of Bad Dreams has finished. Wasted Space is in the process of its last arc coming out. And I can kind of track the growth of Vault by those series. So when I'm thinking about like the Vital Vault series, it's interesting because I have such a range in mind. Not only because we do genre and there's so many myriad subgenres within, but also because we've gotten these wonderful opportunities to work with the same folks multiple times and people in various stages of their careers, from the emerging to the established. And Mike, I wanted to kind of throw a last question over to you about that, because I think I think about Wasted Space, how long it's run, its genre, it's sci-fi. You were doing a lot of very specific things with that book, kind of dirtying up sci-fi again, and bringing back some Philip K. Dick sort of style to comicking. And now you have this upcoming book, Barbaric, which is fantasy. And I was wondering if you could maybe just talk a little bit about how you approach genre, if there's a difference between approaching fantasy and approaching sci-fi, what genre means to you in that regard, and then just kind of the difference between where you were with Wasted Space when you started and where you are now, because I feel like that kind of tracks in many ways the growth of Vault. You want to talk about what's vital to Vault, it's that these relationships and its genre, and you've done both now here, sci-fi and fantasy and horror as well. So I thought I would kind of throw that over to you before we close up.
Sure. Yeah, no, happy to. For me, genre storytelling is kind of like important ideas made fun, I feel like. You can have like these very big, whether they're cultural, political, philosophical ideas and thoughts, and you wrap them in a package that makes it fun, that makes it entertaining. And I think that's like, stuff that I've learned, and we've talked about this, Adrian, Tim, we've talked about this, like writers that we love, like, Le Guin or Vonnegut or Bradbury, or even contemporary now, I think one of the greatest, Jordan Peele is like a direct extension of Twilight Zone, and it's just these writers or creators who do stuff that's like really smart and really intelligent, but also really fun, really entertaining. Like, so when I think about like that as a basis for genre, and I think about Wasted Space is kind of where I feel like I cracked that code, where I'm like, okay, Wasted Space does, if I, can be so bold to say, like have a lot of like important ideas that at least it's wrestling with, it doesn't have answers necessarily, but at least it's grappling with these thoughts. And then I was kind of learning that, and like I said earlier, blending that with voice, which is the entertainment portion, which is the fun. You read it and it's a good time, but also has this, like Hemingway says, the glacier where it's 10% above, 90% below. And Barbaric is like kind of an extension. I don't want to say a perfection, because I don't think you ever perfect these sort of things, but it's an extension of like, okay, how do we do what we did in Wasted Space, what, this kind of thing that we cracked as like, this is how we do genre, like Adrian and I, Tim and I, Vault and I, this is how we do genre. How do we do this in a way that's bigger, and Barbaric is nothing if not bigger, in every conceivable way. And I love that about it. It has like at its, most topical level, or not topical, but it's at its most basic level, it's just about a barbarian who's cursed. He has a talking bloodthirsty axe, and he just goes around getting into stupid adventures, and he admits that everything I do, like this, I live a stupid life, I think he says at some point. But underneath that is like this idea of him being like, I have to do the right thing. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be a right thing? What does it mean to live a good life? How do we know we're making the right decisions? And that's something that is in Wasted Space too, is one of the most, I think, existential terrors. Like if you like, let's say there's a great beyond, and someone watching over that great beyond, and you die and you get there, you're like, oh no, you were supposed to be a bricklayer it was, you screwed up the whole thing. It's terrifying. So like you think about like just that idea of making right decisions, and also elevating them to like applying moralism to that. So it's like there is something going on in Barbaric, but if you don't get any of that, you still get a bloodthirsty axe who gets drunk on blood and has murderous tendencies. So it's a balance.
It's a balance.
That book is so good. Can I just say, like, I read the first issue and then read it 2 more times because I am obsessed with that book. It is so much fun, and so I think so different from Wasted Space, and I think that people will really dig that. But like it still has like your voice in it, and your voice in like a Conan meets The Witcher fantasy world is pretty dope.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Dan. It means a lot. And I'm looking forward to your new one. I'm waiting for Adrian to slip it over to me one of these days.
It'll be coming very soon. And
Excellent.
It looks incredible and it reads incredibly because of course it's Danny. So I think that kind of ends things in terms of timeline. I don't want to keep everyone too long. And I feel like that was a really nice sort of summation of what it means to do genre fiction, and specifically to do genre fiction at Vault. It's the permission to push boundaries and the support to push boundaries. It's a balancing act of kind of highbrow and hijinks. It's returning to themes and evolving them from your first foray to your next. And I hope that Vault continues to be a place where not only you, Mike, and you, Danny, and you, Tim, but all of our creators can continue to return and mature their own understanding of genre, because as they do, Vault will mature and our publications will only be better for it. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming to our Vault Vital panel with Michael Moreci, Danny Lohr, Tim Daniel, David Dissanayake, and Syndee Barwick. If you want to learn more about Vault's catalog, please explore our Vault booth. Be sure to pick up our program guide because there are a ton of extended previews all linked through it for our whole catalog. You can get a taste of our sci-fi, our fantasy, our horror, and even check out our middle grade stuff that plays in the same genres, but for a much younger audience. And don't forget to visit our website, vaultcomics.com. So yeah, thank you so much and have a great show.